I'm Mark Stewart Greenstein with a bridge to the past that's really important. Please pay attention. This is another issue of what would Stewart do? So unless you are in your 12th decade and as a child glimpsed Grover Cleveland in his last years, you have never seen a Democrat who's running for office like me. You've also never seen a system of American government like we had in President Cleveland's day. So I need you to be open-minded that a system that worked very well could again become the system here in Connecticut. The system was of minimal government. The federal government didn't intrude into our daily lives. It didn't even have the authority to mess with people's lives because officials then respected the Constitution. State governments butted out. They saw themselves as being tasked to a few necessary things, and that the populace would thrive without the state's input because individuals do things better and groups do things better than the state could ever do. That was the mindset up until, I'm going to say, the teens, where some progressive leaders, not much of the population though, progressive leaders thought we can do it better using our PhDs and using new science. Woodrow Wilson was one of those. He never got a majority of the vote to get into as president in 1912, but he still won in a three-way race. And there were more and more progressives who, without science behind them, just wanted to change things, change them for the better. So over the next few decades, we moved to more and more reliance on specialists, and with it, more and more reliance on government. FDR takes power in the 1930s when we're flat in a recession. Oh, everything seems to look so bad. Never mind that recessions generally cured themselves throughout the prior century. This time, we have to do it better. And of course, they didn't. They prolonged the recession. It actually got worse, became a depression, in part because of government policies, two stupid policies that could have been avoided. Government messes with our lives, and people need to realize that absent government, we do fine. Okay? In a time when government was minimal, people were very well off. In the 1890s, very few families were pressed to pay their bills. Almost all families had leisure time in abundance. They could study the arts. They could read for pleasure. They had Sundays completely devoted to religion if they were devout, or other things if they weren't. We don't have that now. And I do think some of the culprit is big government. Big government is not a savior, okay? You didn't need big government in the 1890s and 1900s. People didn't starve, okay? Businesses could actually form more easily 120 years ago. If you wanted to be educated, you were probably better educated in K through 12 120 years ago. Almost certainly, you had less stratification of income. And one reason why is that income great differences are in part a modern thing that is fueled by government. Here's the link that I do know, because I can only read about the 1890s and 19-teens. But I can listen, and I have, to older people. I've now been to 3 old age homes. Homes where a lot of elderly people live. Sorry if I'm not politically correct, but I really respect the aged among us. And when I ask nonagenarians, those in their 90s, do you feel that when you were a girl, you had it better than the teens of today? It's unquestionable. Yes, they'll say, okay? Growing up in the 40s was more wholesome, easier, happier. Ask that of older men. Don't have as many in the old age homes, but they'll say the same thing. And I do believe what has changed is, most dramatically, is not technology. Technology makes things easier on us, okay? Family relationships have stayed the same. Individual aspirations, no different. What is very different is how involved government has gotten in our lives. So from a time freedom basis, from a moral basis, and ultimately on an economic basis, we need to consider why less government is more healthful for all. I'm Mark Stewart. Please let this ground you when you hear proposals that might sound starkly different, but in fact are reminiscent of some very good governance from the 1920s and earlier.